It's Reiki, but not as you know it.
Hello there, Linda.
Hello.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yes.
You know, I think it's so cool that this tavern allows dogs, because today I have Logan with me, my chocolate lab, and he's already found a spot by the fire. He loves the heat.
Doesn't he melt? I mean, chocolate, fire.
True. Well, if we start smelling something, we'll know something's happening.
We'll get the marshmallows and the graham crackers out and we'll make s'mores. We'll call them Logan Lickers.
He has a bad habit of licking, but we won't go down.
Licking but what?
Wow, the world knows. Poor Logan. Oh, he's so bad.
That's a very interesting and slightly flammable tipple you have there.
Yes, Cornelia. She said it was lava temple.
Okay, and it looks like it sounds. Yeah.
Yes, and she claims I'll love it.
Do you have any idea what's in it, or?
I think I see red pepper flakes, but I'm not certain that's what they are.
Make sure Logan doesn't have any, because he will certainly be licking his butt after that comes out.
Oh no, we don't want any of that. No, especially if he's near the flame to start. Oh, we're out of control again. So what do you have?
Well, this rather interesting black liquid in this rather ornate goblet that I'm drinking is called a haunted howler, apparently.
Oh.
Yeah, it's an aperitif. If you drink it, it makes you hungry.
Oh.
Apparently, if you put the goblet up to your ears, you hear the wooing of ghosts. I didn't know ghosts wooed, but you know. certainly doing something.
It's interesting. So is it sweet?
It is sort of sweet with a bitter aftertaste.
It looks thick.
Yeah, and it smells of beef.
Oh, you always have the weirdest. It isn't pond scum, it's fish.
I don't know where Cornelia gets the ingredients from.
Oh, she's very creative. I think I know she lives near a river. and there's a lot of goose there too.
and cows apparently as well.
Oh,
this definitely has the essence of cow about it. It's quite remarkable.
I think I'll take flames over your cow stuff.
I may be drinking this really slowly.
I think you may need a pitcher of water afterwards.
Or trauma therapy.
Oh, yuck.
It's a good job we've got lots and lots to explore today, isn't it? So that we've got plenty of time to ingest.
Yeah, mine will be, because mine is too hot, and yours, well, I don't know what yours is. It's a very cool goblet.
Oh, it's lovely, isn't it? Yes. So, Linda, let's talk about KRT, or Karmic Regression Therapy.
Yeah.
Which, for our listeners, is one of the 5 modalities of one therapy, and is really the modality that looks at time and our perspective of time. We start with this premise that because we are so confined and restricted by time in our own lifetime, we only have a finite amount of time, and in that respect we become addicted to time. Everything becomes about time. And so by looking at time in different ways and approaching it with a different attitude, you can begin to work through this addiction and go into recovery from the addiction. Obviously, Karmic regression therapy, we begin with the idea of karma and how the traditional concept of karma can be reworked for a more modern perspective. But let's begin with another aspect of KRT, which is the holographic perspective of how we can look at time, and this holographic sensibility around the idea of time, and more importantly, how we fit into time.
Right.
So this idea of holography, two opposing experiences, shall we say, that interact with each other and create the whole thing. So this moment now being created in its entirety by these two other cornerstones of the experience.
I love it.
I think that's just fascinating, how we can completely rework this idea of life being from birth to death, and this moment now being some point in between, to how this point is created by how those two other points are interacting with each other.
I know. It's really amazing.
So we see birth having happened in our time addiction, so we see it as being in the past, and we know that death will happen, because logic tells us that if a creature is born, it will die. The two are intrinsically linked.
Yeah.
And one cannot be born and not die. Knowing that we have these 2 points, one of which is fixed through observation, because everything that happens, it happens in multiple possibilities until we observe it. And when we fix it through observation, then it becomes a part of a cornerstone.
Right? It becomes, yeah.
It becomes, exactly. So the fact that we observed our birth, every moment of every day, we observe our birth in the living of life. That observation fixes that at a point. Death we have not yet observed, so therefore it exists in multiple realities, and that's the point that we know will happen, but we are constantly changing it. And when we learn how to pick a death adventure in a certain reality, it will change the way that holographically birth and death interact, and therefore change this moment right now. So what we look to do in the KRT treatment, holographic treatment, is we adjust the death adventure in some way to create the reality that we want now in life. And that is extraordinary. It is that rewriting of the moment in every moment.
And it's funny because, again, even though things may be challenging and you think, okay, now what? Oh, great. Now, I thought we were over this, or I thought things were smoothing out. And, lo and behold, here comes not one, but maybe 3 things at you. You can still navigate that. And I think, for me, it doesn't matter how long I have been immersed in one therapy. It's forever revealing more. And it's comforting. You wouldn't expect that necessarily. You'd expect, if you're solution driven, I might be that kind of person. You're always looking for problem resolution, and that can potentially make you very rigid in your expectations and cause you not to live as fulfilling as you would like because of rigid expectations and unrealistic expectations, because sometimes you got to let go of stuff. A lot of times you have to let go of stuff. You know, we were talking about losing the definition of who we think we are, you know, losing the definitions of a lot of parameters that we have built our life around that have to go.
Absolutely.
That have to go.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And it's okay to let go of stuff. You can't take on everything as much as you would like to. You can't take on everything without recognizing the value of focusing on what really is most going to benefit you now. And I think that's how we all can get overwhelmed otherwise. Just saying, yeah, but this is really important. I have to do this. People are counting on me, or it's expected of me, or all these silly definitions. They really are silly definitions. It's great to be driven. It's great to be curious. It's great to be an adventurer. But on the flip side, if you're, you know, running reckless abandon, that's not very good.
And that experience of so many, I mean, there's thousands of things to learn in therapy. It's just like so much. It's just it is mind-boggling.
Thousands, I'm thinking millions.
Yes, yeah. For example, you could look at V-Reiki and the facets of Ki, and each one of those facets opens up a whole new world. Yeah. It's like if you imagine the universe, which, you know, unimaginable, but if you attempted, and you imagine that Reiki is a force within the universe that is at every single point in the universe, every spatial point, every temporal point, every experiential point. It's just everywhere, and we are saturated in it. But then the moment you open the door on Jiki, you understand that everything exists within that frame as well. So there are these parallel points. And just in terms of the facets of Ki, everything that can be experienced with the Reiki perspective can also be experienced with the Jiki perspective. Mm-hmm. And they create very different results. So the experiences are completely different, even when you're approaching one thing through the two perspectives, because they are universally different to each other. Mm-hmm. Then when you look at something completely different to that, say, for example, an essence in Psy Q, again, the entire universe seen from the perspective of that essence. So literally there is this endless supply of different experiences that can be had, and just one of those is beyond multiple lifetimes of experience.
Right.
So all we can do is just cram as much experience in as we possibly
Right.
can.
Right. And you know, it's I hear it so often from students, you know, how am I going to ever remember all of this? How, you know, I'm trying to make flashcards of the essences, or I'm, you know, and it's wonderful, you know, whatever tools a student has to help them absorb and immerse themselves deeper, that's wonderful. I encourage it all, but I also sit back and just kind of smile and say, you won't ever remember all of this because it's unlimited. There is infinite possibilities with all of this. So just learn to glean what you can in the moment, because it builds, you know, it's, and even when you build after years and years and years, there comes a point that I mentioned to you earlier where you go back and say, oh, whoa, I forgot about that. I look at that and how interesting it looks now based on where I've been and where I am now. So there's never an opportunity to become bored.
No, absolutely. And it is a completely different approach to learning, because in school we are taught we have to remember everything.
Yes.
You know, there is this point in education where we are tested for our knowledge, basically our ability to remember things.
Yes.
And the more that we can learn and remember of what we've learned, the better we tend to do at tests.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the experience of one therapy is very much this idea of learn the frameworks, you know, so the framework of this, so your practitioner framework, learn that, but then what you fill that with is in the moment, and
Right.
what is most needed in that moment, you will enter that particular universe of that thing within that moment. So you might enter into a Reiki perspective, and that's very often where we work from, is the Reiki perspective, because it is so foundational, and it is a really powerful go-to. So that's the one that we often immediately go to. However, there's so much in VM and in a V state perspective, that as soon as we enter into that V state, we completely shift how we work and how we do things. You may not remember that when you're in the Reiki universe, if you like, but the moment you need it, it will be there. And we learn it in the moment again. Right. So there's not that onus on remembering. You don't need to remember every single essence, and you don't need to remember every single treatment methodology, because when you need it, it will present itself to you. And you can always go back and say, what is a really good treatment for this particular client? And then you can go back and actually research that and go, oh yeah, that one. I remember that one now. That's really, really cool.
Yes. Yeah. What experience did it? What was the result of your own experience that helps you? And also sharing amongst community members, you know, being able to share, you know, have you thought of it this way? Or here's what I do. It's all very fascinating. As time goes on, I'm becoming more and more in awe at how endless it is.
And that is this idea of the more we know, the more that we know there is to know.
Yes.
So it's like that surface of the balloon. So as the balloon expands, the surface area gets bigger, and we see more, we experience more, and we know how much more there is. And so it becomes more and more overwhelming in that respect, because it's like there's just so much. And that's where the imposter syndrome can creep in, because you think there's just so much to learn, so much to know. How am I ever going to do it? And that's where I always sort of say to people, if you are feeling that, then you are in the right place. It's when you say, oh, I know it all, that's where the problems are. Because if you feel you know it all, you're not in that expansive, there is so much to learn place. You are looking at this in a very finite way, and that is problematic.
And that's limiting. And that's very limiting.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Yeah. So when I see people online, usually saying, oh, that's not Reiki, or this is what Reiki is, they are working from this place of limited, not truly understanding how utterly endless the experience of Reiki is. And they are taking something that is multiversal and squeezing it down into a little tiny box of possession, a box they can possess, because they're taking that old school mentality of, I need to remember all of this so that if ever I'm tested on it, I will remember it. And they're squeezing it down into that, this is manageable, this is memorable, rather than understanding that the experience of Reiki is a constant lifelong learning, that every moment we are partaking in that knowledge, it is expanding exponentially, and growing to a point where we just can't contain it. It's too much, too much for us in our little lives. And so we just bathe in it, immerse ourselves in it, cherish it for what it is in that moment, and then move on to the next moment, which is even more than the last.
Right. And you can't imagine, but when it's there, when you're there, and then that now, it's like, wow. It's like, wow.
Exactly. And there comes a point where quantification is just moot. There's no point to it. You can't quantify. You know, we could quantify, for example, the amount of tools or techniques there are in one therapy at the moment. We could quantify the amount of essences that have been listed in the manuals. But that isn't an accurate quantity.
No.
All of the essences that have been created by all of the one therapists is unquantifiable.
Right.
And that's where this understanding of quantity just being nondescript, no quantity is measurable in the face of infinite experience and infinite knowledge. We cannot compare the two, because one has no quantity and the other is just infinitesimally tiny compared to that, or insignificant compared to that. And that is the very nature of one therapy and of Reiki as a universal experience. It is unquantifiable. And if we try and quantify it, it's just worthless in the face of that.
Right.
Start to apply the different karmic realms to ourselves, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, so in that aspect of life, I often just slip into that particular karmic realm, automatically just go there because that's what I have entrained myself into and what I've become accustomed to doing.
Right.
And being acknowledging of the act of that and the act of slipping into that karmic state is the very first step in understanding how you can alter that and actually go into another state rather than the one that you're familiar with.
Right.
In that particular context.
And I think it's important to mention here as well that this is why a self-evaluation of where you are at becomes your best tool moving forward. Day-to-day life, working with people, it's so useful. But you have to understand it in yourself first, because then you can recognize it in others.
The process of actually identifying it in yourself is so enlightening in its own right, because we create such bias that protect us, really. And I don't often use the word protect, but they do. Biases protect us from a big scary world. And the nature of looking at our karmic realms and where we visit karmically is really important, because we are revealing what exists beyond that bias and challenging those biases so that we can reveal a greater sense of truth of ourselves and then do something about it. You know, the naivety, which is actually one of the karmic realms and indicative of that particular realm, that naivety does need to be pulled away for us to get a more accurate understanding of our lives and our experience of life.
Right. It limits us, and it needs to be expanded.
So the concept of karma is an interesting one, and this is Reiki, but not as you know it. So we could say this is karma, but not as you know it, because it's
not as you
different.
know it.
It's going to be completely different, but it does honor its heritage, and I think that's the thing with everything that we do in terms of one therapy is we honor tradition and history and all of the trials and tribulations and joys and wonders that humankind has experienced to this point. You know, I think it's really important to honor our ancestry and honor our heritage. And it's also about taking that, acknowledging it, and evolving it to the modern world and our modern experience, because our ancestors did not struggle to come to this knowledge and fight the good fight to get to this knowledge for us just to do what they did and not really apply it to the different contexts of our lives, to waste it, in other words. They did it so that we could take that torch and carry it on and evolve it and change it and make it more expansive for our modern context.
Which is critical for the evolution of the practice.
Absolutely, yeah, because without it, you get dogma. If you're working towards a philosophy that has not changed from 2,000 years ago, then there is going to be an enormous dogma built into that, because it's not made for a modern context. And so therefore it will be trying to change things that actually we've moved beyond. And the only way that we can change those things is to regress into a more primitive state, to then, once we are in that primitive state, to then change those things. But then we're stuck in that primitive state. So it's really important that all philosophy that is appropriate at the time it was invented or created is evolved when we pick it back up again and when we look at that. So in terms of karma, now traditionally and particularly in terms of Buddhist experience of karma, there is this idea of different lives and reincarnation. So the living of a life, and depending on the behaviors and actions within that life, when a person dies, they are reincarnated into another life that in some way mirrors the actions of their previous life. And the overarching concept of this is that there is growth and evolution through all of these lives to reach a point of enlightenment. And so eventually we become enlightened and then the process of reincarnation no longer needs to happen because we are in that enlightened state. Now, traditionally, this is a very powerful concept. And in one therapy, in KRT, how we approach this is not to see the karmic realms that we pass through in lives as being lifelong, but seeing them in the moment. So in one moment, you might enter into a particular karmic realm and behave from that realm. That then echoes out into your life. But in the next moment, in a different context, you might enter into another realm and behave completely differently. And when we recognize that moment to moment, we begin to see where our inhabitants of those karmic realms is.
Right.
So the first realm that we encounter in terms of the karmic realms is the realm of devas, or gods. And in this realm, the behavior is very much that of being in a place of real power and real strength, but being completely blind to the needs of others.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, it's a question of sitting within one's own privilege, within one's own sense of power, within one's own wealth and material possession, and not really caring about anybody else outside of that, just living this grand life in an ivory tower and not really paying heed to anybody else in the world beyond the immediate environment of that privilege. And we see that a lot in the world.
Yes, we do.
In terms of privilege and in terms of how people behave towards each other, there is a lot of the realm of devas going on.
Yes, indeed. You don't have to look too far.
No. That sense of indifference, it's a really interesting way into this particular realm. The experience of one therapy and everything in it is so vast and complex, and is so amazingly transformative in the journey that you go on as you partake in all of this, that when you find yourself empowered by this experience, it is like being in that ivory tower. And so sometimes I will find myself looking at, for example, somebody who has studied Usui Reiki, and I will find myself in that state of actually just like, okay, that's Usui Reiki, that's not V Reiki, for example. And there is that disconnect between the two. And it's really interesting to sort of recognize that in myself, how I don't always act accordingly, in as much as really truly understanding what it is like to be within the experience of Usui Reiki.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's an interesting viewpoint to hear you say. I'm probably jumping ahead because I know what the steps are, but what was your initial response to yourself when you recognized that?
It's a really interesting, multifaceted experience, that particular response, because sitting behind it is all of the dogma and all of the dismissal and the struggle that I had as an Usui Reiki master, exploring my experience of the Reiki universe. And every time I would step outside of Usui Reiki, I would be shouted down, slapped back, told that I was wrong. And all of that wealth of experience, the bullying, the in-community squabbling, the backbiting, the dogma that exists within the Usui Reiki community, all of that sits behind the reason that I now don't necessarily immediately or naturally go into an Usui Reiki perspective. Mm-hmm. So I forget what that is like. And so there is this sense of, well, that they don't really sort of like respect me, so I'm just not going to have anything to do with them.
I'm going to
And so
detach.
it does come from that sort of removing myself from that community and going off on my own adventures, and not wanting to replicate that within the one therapy community. I never would want to take away the experience of somebody else, and I always want to honor their experiences. But that doesn't always extend to Usui Reiki masters and practitioners. And it is a very, very complex experience to actually sort of feel that and to know, actually, that's not how I want to be, within myself. I don't want to dishonor their experience, but sometimes I just slip into that diva realm, and like that's a diva, then it's the diva realm. I'm a bit of a diva. Into the diva realm, and actually sort of take on that. Therapy is so much more nuanced than a Usui Reiki.
It's fascinating, but how accurate. And I'm not saying that critically of you, but how easy it is for any of us to cop that attitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you could say, well, it's just how we are. Okay, but that doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah.
It's about being responsible and accountable in all aspects, even when you feel justified in doing what you're doing.
Definitely, yes. Yeah. And you know what the really strange thing about this is that every step of the way, I have recorded in the cobbles and the bricks and the framework of one therapy the history of Usui Reiki. So it's all there. So everything that I learned along the way, all of the teachings that I myself was taught, I built it into the framework because I wanted to honor the people who were coming along on that journey after me. I didn't want to say, I'm not going to dismiss this because I no longer believe it. I wanted it to be there, to be an honoring of those who have come before. So, for example, to honor Mikao Usui, who, his teachings changed my life. And I wouldn't be here, the person I am today, without what he did and without everybody that brought his message along the way to me. So it's the lineage in Usui Reiki, honoring every single person in that lineage and that journey that started with Mikao Usui and sort of came to this moment right now. Wanting to honor that meant that everything is all there in the realms. Yet when you travel so far away from that, in terms of the absolute limits of the one therapy realms as we currently know them in our time addiction, then looking back, it seems so far away that we forget it. And it's like, I've forgotten that so much of Usui Reiki is there, upon the journey.
And everything is of value.
Absolutely.
Regardless of what value we may place on it. Everything is of value, and isn't what you're just describing the whole healing process of repatterning, and how I don't know that we're ever free of it completely when we have definitions, although they are old now, they can still percolate up. Depending on the circumstance. But if we look at these as opportunities of continued growth, we don't step into that realm for too long.
Absolutely.
We recognize it, become responsible and accountable, and move on.
Definitely, yes, yeah. And there's that sense that in the moment of being in one of the other karmic realms and traveling to those other realms, in the moment of the experiences in the Usui Reiki community, because the things that took place did send me into one of the other realms that we'll sort of look at a little bit later. But that experience of being in those other realms caused a whole sort of reaction within me. And I can remember, so for example, there was a very public, on a forum, an internet forum, vilification of something that I had said in the days where I used to partake in public forums. And we were talking about healing crisis, and somebody had asked a question about healing crisis, and I had put in my perspective, and sort of been very measured, as I always am, and talked about how I saw that process and how I did believe that it was a part of Sui Reiki treatments. And I was completely shouted down, and that was a very painful experience, that my perspective was not being honored in that moment, and that sort of everything that I had done, all the years of learning and growth and experience and working with clients, was just being completely diminished in that moment. And so that in itself put me into one of the karmic realms, and that has over the years grown into, and moving away from that experience, has grown into being in the Deva realm. However, I still honor the people that did that, because if they hadn't have done that,
right,
I would not have done what I did,
right.
and I would not have gone off on my own and said, right, well, if I don't fit into this community, I'm going to make my own community. I'm going to find my people and my tribe, and I'm going to create an environment where we can all come together and be happy, and get on and have dialogue, not shout each other down and tell each other we're wrong, or they're wrong, or that's not the way, but to honor each other's hard-earned life experiences.
Right. And I think, when we do experience, to me, that's trauma. Those kind of traumatic rejections and dishonor of who you are. It's one thing if you just say fine and walk away and leave it and not do anything with it, versus what you were saying, how you said, okay, right, I'm going to create something new where everyone is accepted and where everyone is honored regardless. That's a very important difference from, again, being stuck in that realm, because you would just be replicating the same exact things that hurt you. If you just said, fine, I'm taking my toys out of the sandbox and I'm going to go in another one and build basically the same thing, what good is that? What good is that?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that understanding of sometimes things happen in life, a lot of the time things happen in life because they inspire us to change, and they inspire us to transcend the experience of that, and to not only make something better for ourselves, but to share that with the world so that other people can in some way find betterment in their own life,
right,
and find their own way of actually sort of getting out of situations that they perhaps don't want to be in.
Right. Which again is another wonderful quality of one therapy. It's not my way or the highway. It's not your way, it's not my way, it's our way. And as individuals contributing to that way, this is a totally different concept than what's out there.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. And that's such an important thing as well, is that one of the features of the realm of Deva or gods is a sense of power, and power is the bridge that goes between that realm and the next realm, the realm of Titans. But that sense of power, how you use that power and you use that bridge, is all important when it comes to moving between the realms. Because if you use power in a way that enforces that privilege and diminishes others so that you become more powerful and have power over other people, then you are keeping yourself in that realm, or transcending into the realm of Titans. However, when you use that power and that privilege to actually create an environment for change that others can come into and be empowered by, so they get their own power by being in that environment and being able to partake in that environment, I think that's where things begin to shift and change. So when we find ourselves in one of the karmic realms that perhaps we don't particularly want to be in, understanding how we're going to use the basis of that realm to change things up and to create betterment for others. That, I think, is key to that experience, and to understanding how to approach being in that realm.
Right, because we're all exposed to them.
Absolutely, yeah.
No one's immune to them.
Yeah. In fact, the very sort of nature of karma is that to be alive is to be in one of the karmic realms.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's no escape.
Exactly. So I'm going to turn the spotlight on you now, Linda, because when we come into the realm of Titans, I wonder if you have any experiences in terms of the Titan realm. And I ask you this because when I think about the realm of Titans, you are not the person that comes to mind immediately, in as much as the realm of Titans is about very powerful beings who look at the gods and the devas, and they are immensely jealous of them. They want what the devas have. And in that wanting, they become absolutely filled with hate and rage, and they just crave this power, this wealth, this privilege that the devas have, and it completely and utterly corrupts the Titans until they are just these absolute black holes of hatred, and hatred being the key here. And I'd really like to know, Linda, how does that apply to you?
Oh, that's just lovely. Thank you. But unfortunately, if I'm honest with myself, I can say that there are a number of things that will fire me up into that direction. And I think just the experience of going through one therapy has really helped me utilize it as a tool more than a default or a prison almost. If you think of that Titan realm, to me, when it's contractive, it's a prison, and you can't do anything productive with that fuel, because hate and jealousy, those are all emotionally driven, powerful tools. There have been a lot of experiences through my practitionership, shall we say, where I've encountered a lot of injustices, where either the injustice has been done towards me or I see it being done towards others. And I think I have a harder time when I see it being done towards others. So if you think of, the all powerfuls coming down on what your definition of someone in a weaker position, that viewpoint to me will raise the dragon. Light that, I was trying to think of a nice word, but there is no nice word, but light that person or situation on fire.
I know what you were going to say. That's not a nice word. But very fitting in the realm of Titans.
Yes, you know me so well. But I think, over time, and anyone who knows me knows that is not too far from the surface if those kinds of situations come up.
Potty mouth.
Or flames, whichever.
The flames of potty mouth.
But it's interesting to be in that realm now, because previously it would I would see red. And that's very, that's detrimental to you as a human, to have that turned inwardly, especially with a Titan mentality or experience witnessing it, the all-powerful, when you feel like there's nothing I can do, I just want to explode. Hate and anger and jealousy, those are all those bubbling up volcanic kind of material that you don't want to get too close to. when you recognize why you react in that way and understand the trauma and the hurt that you need to be accountable and responsible to heal, nobody's going to do it for you. What's done is done. And everything, just as your example, everything happened for a reason to benefit. And I can't help anyone if I'm a cinder. I can't help anyone if I lose it and end up in jail. It's not funny, but I mean, that is the extreme. So utilizing that fuel in a way to be the warrior with the right compassion, with understanding there's a reason why this person is in the Titan realm and why they behave the way they do. It's not because they're the all-powerful Oz, there are some injuries and traumas in their life as well. And that softens and that changes the hate to compassion. For me personally, with regard to jealousy, I've never really been envious of anyone. And watch it, they'll come flooding to me now that I say this. Thank you, universe. But seriously, I've never, probably because I grew up with it all around me. And it's one of those things that, fine, I'm not going to be that way. Even though we all possess that ability to be jealous. It happens. But that too is something that when I'm in that realm, I recognize it because of past traumas. And again, it comes to compassion. It really, really does. When I'm in that realm, because it can happen in a switch. Someone could behave a certain way and bam, it's there. But it's again, being accountable and responsible to choose, number one, heal yourself, then help others be able to recognize and not give them the solution, not give them the answer, but point them in the direction of like, have you looked at it from this perspective? And yes, it can be a terrible realm to be in, but do something about it because you don't want to be stuck in it. So it's very transformative, I think. All of the realms, the karmic realms, have potential for transformation.
Oh, absolutely, yes, yeah. That is an enormous part of the journey, so in terms of traditions, this idea of traveling from one realm to another and evolving through the realms. We're starting off in the realms of the deva and the power and the blindness to the suffering of the world is where it all begins, and transcending into the realm of Titans is an evolution from that. It's that hatred of the very thing that gives you power, the power that you're born with in many ways. It's that hatred of that power that causes an evolution and sends you on that journey. In so many ways, we as human beings do this a lot, where we actually hate the things within us or within the world that actually are the source of our own power.
Right. And it's utilizing that power, not in a contractive way, but in an expansive way.
Absolutely.
It's not good or bad as much as it is contractive and expansive. If you take away the positive and negative and think about it from a natural process, it just makes it easier to digest, I think.
Absolutely.
Because you're taking out the emotion of it. It's the emotion that clutters it up.
Yeah.
Our definition of the emotion that we're experiencing.
Moving beyond the realm of Titans, the bridge between the Titans and the next realm is desire, and that sense of wanting. For the Titans, it's the wanting to destroy the Deva. It's the wanting of what they have and the jealousy that's created from that wanting. As we start to go over the bridge of desire, we enter into the realm of the hungry ghost.
Never enough. Yeah, never enough.
Never enough. Always wanting. The sense of starving and that hunger for pleasure that comes from that starvation, that desolation. In many ways, the creation of addiction from that torment of being starving, and how addiction is created from a complete lack of something or a complete lack of nourishment, is why this particular karmic realm is so prevalent in our world and in society. Addiction to whatever that may be is just everywhere in the world.
Absolutely saturated.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can think of so many circumstances where, you know, you can see people in that realm so clearly because they're constantly looking for fulfillment outside of themselves.
Yeah.
And are willing to try anything to get there without recognizing that it's still an empty vessel. The vessel itself is not empty, but you're thinking it's empty. So you're constantly, well, maybe it's this. Well, maybe if I do this, or maybe if I follow this diet, or maybe if I join this group, or maybe if I enroll in this program, or maybe. All I can think of is the Cookie Monster. Cookies, more cookies.
More cookies. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's sad. I mean, you know, because you want to just pluck them out of that realm and say, no, you don't need to do this.
Yeah.
You can remove yourself from this addiction.
We rely on addiction in life because we can look at, for example, some of the big well-known addictions. So, for example, alcohol or cigarettes or drugs or gambling. You know, these particular areas of addiction are seen as being the archetypes of addiction. But in KRT, we talk about addiction to time, how everything is time specific, and that living in this corporeal form is in itself a reliance on time, the time we are given from birth to death. So even time is something that we become addicted to.
Right.
And everything on from the ground up, we can become addicted to and create these addictive patterns.
Absolutely. I mean, how many people do you know feel like they never have enough time to get done what they need to get done?
Yeah.
And so they're constantly like the gerbil on the wheel, constantly spinning and going nowhere.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I mean, in our modern world, when we think about attention span and how quickly somebody can click off of a web page or click on to the next social media post, there is this urgency. You know, I don't have the time to actually really look at this beautiful piece of art that someone has created and maybe has taken many, many weeks or months to really invest themselves in and create something really beautiful. I'm literally going to give it 2 seconds of my time and then click like and then go on to the next thing. And that addiction to time can often manifest itself in the urgency of just getting through to the next thing, like. And I think it's really powerful when we start to look at our own time addiction and just how addicted to time we are, and how that call to transcend the addiction, to become sober in terms of time addiction, and how that call can really change the way that we view our lives and how we give it a different quality because of that. This is a realm that I personally have had to do a lot of work around because it's almost miasmatic in the sense of how it has affected me in my life. I spent a lot of time in the realm of the hungry ghost as a child and a teenager, desperate for some form of nurture or care or love. And so often I would be devoid of that from those around me, that I learnt and adapted how I navigated life to the point where I would take on all of the crap from around me and all other people's crap. So I became the source of the problem, to the point where many would say that I was ghost-like. I would be the thorn in the side, the source of all problems. If something went wrong, it would be me that was the cause of that. And it was a persona that I took on board and relished. I was happy to be the bad guy, happy to be the problem, because I knew how to deal with it. I knew how to be that one and move on from it. And over the years, it took a lot to start transcending that. And even later on, I would go back into that and play the bad guy. When I saw a situation that was toxic and where people were just destroying each other, I would step into that environment and take it all on board and become the bad guy, because I knew how to process it when they didn't. So that has become a realm that I'm very familiar with. And I think a lot of people do that. They will take the brunt of people's ire and hatred because they know how to do it. And it goes in and it hurts and it's deeply painful. But people like me come out the other end. We know how to get out the other end when all of that hatred and scorn is directed towards us, even when we didn't deserve it, because actually we weren't the cause of the problem.
Yeah, and here would come Linda in the Titan realm saying, no, come, get out of there. Get out of
there. You tell me who did it and I'll I'll swear at them like I've got Tourette.
And then light them on fire.
Love. Isn't it amazing how the reaction to a person in one realm can be being in one of the other realms? And that's interesting, because the two realms that neighbor the hungry ghost are the Titans, with this absolute hatred and jealousy. And on the other side, we have the realm of hell, which is driven by anger.
Yes.
And
I know.
And that sort of fire, again, in reaction to injustice and to the pain of the world. But in many ways, it's so entrapped within that rage and anger that it actually inspires it. It actually wants to set the world on fire, not because it hates it, but because it's just life is suffering and life is pain, and let's just light the whole thing up.
That actually is more my realm than the Titan realm. The Titan realm is just a catalyst experience. The hell realm, it could be the detriment of me from early childhood, just being constantly exposed to that behavior and that attitude and that stance and that role. It really embedded in me, that an imprint. It was obviously, we're talking karmic, so we are also talking ancestral. So I know it's on a cellular level. And the interesting thing is about the lighting on fire. Fire represents purification as well. And over the years, I've grown from wanting to just torch everything to understanding that even fire has its role and place in purification, and what is remaining is changed with fire. And so understanding when I am in that realm, and I'm not saying I don't go in there, because I might only be in there for a second before I recognize, like, whoop, where's the fire extinguisher? I find it a very useful realm because it does fuel my passion, my drive, my desire to create new, to create something different, to create something where anyone can step into a place where they are welcomed regardless of what baggage they bring in.
Absolutely.
Regardless of who they are, who they've been told they are, because 9 times out of 10, I can see who they are. And they don't even recognize it yet. So if that's what fire can do, I embrace it. Not the hissing and spitting doesn't have to come along.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is interesting in so many ways that there are so many facets to the realm. So for example, in the realm of hungry ghosts, we could look at that as being a hunger for food, a hunger for possessions, a hunger for money, just a hunger. So whenever there is this sense of a person just wanting more, and there can be sort of like a very strong materialistic element, but then there's also the hunger for affection, for love, for care. The same goes with the realm of hell as well, in as much as there is this sense of a feeling of isolation within hell, of being completely alone, and also feeling completely unlovable. So that anger and blind rage, that fire, means that other people don't want to go near in case they get burnt, but also step back, and so perpetrate this feeling of being completely isolated or alone, because no one can actually reach out. And what I find so fascinating with us being in these two neighboring realms is as much as you use the fire for the fuel to help you to defend others, to nurture others, to look after others, and to sort of help them on their journey. And in many ways, I use the realm of hungry ghosts as a reminder that I don't want anyone else to be there.
Right.
And if I can help people get out of that,
yes,
and I can get them to find those little trapdoors and those secret passages out of that realm, then that's what I will do. And I will call into that realm and say, come over here, let me help. And it is really interesting how those two realms, where we very much have spent a lot of time, actually become really powerful in that drive to help others and that drive to ensure that others don't suffer.
Right. And that's why I was saying that, this isn't good or bad. This is expansive, contractive or expansive. Are you going to be stuck, or are you going to utilize it in a way that everyone benefits? I'm all for win-win.
next realm that we come to is the realm of animals. And the core challenge of this realm is a sense of complete naivety, what some people might call stupidity, being completely unaware of everything around you. And so we are almost sort of trapped in this limbo, this stasis in this realm, because we're just so disconnected from the reality of the world. Something you may find in this realm, Linda, is listening to somebody else speak and thinking, oh my God, you're so stupid. I know you think that all the time.
Oh my goodness.
No, I mean, seriously, I mean, I know you don't think that all the time. There is this sense of people not really getting reality and not really understanding what is going on. I think that is so indicative of the realm of animals, and is a very interesting dynamic, which is not necessarily as direct and influential as some of the other realms, but almost creates this malaise that just exists within the world, where people don't get involved. They don't really understand the root of the challenge or the problems. Maybe, for example, they think it's okay to do something or to believe something or to think something without really understanding the consequences.
Yeah, they don't mean anything by it.
Yeah. Or because they spend a lot of time maybe in one of the other realms, for example, the realms of devas, and are unaware of what goes on in the world, that they use their position of power and privilege to say things that are actually incredibly naive and incredibly detrimental to others. So the results of that are, for example, in the realm of Titans or the Hell realm, that there is a lot of anger and hatred created from those statements because the person hasn't really understood the ramifications of what they say.
Right.
And I can think of quite a few people.
I was just looking up saying, oh man, that's a long one. That's a long list. And you know, that's not a favorite realm. That definitely sparks the flames, because you wonder, how did they get there? What experiences did they have? And because that's how I look at things, like, okay, my initial knee-jerk reaction is hell realm. And then I say, okay, wait, why are they the way they are? You know, what has happened? How can you be so destitute to reality that you don't understand that a particular statement or a stance that you have is so ignorant? Your comment wasn't too far from the mark. Sometimes I do. It's a hey, like, are you kidding me? Like, well, do you know what you're saying? Do you understand? Do you listen to what you're saying? You know, I try all these things. And that's a very frustrating realm to deal with.
Definitely,
for me,
yeah.
personally.
This realm equates to our very base level human nature as animals, you know. So if you think of the human animal, the physiological creature that we are, the instincts that we have and that we are born into the world in. A newborn baby, if you, as you know, put your finger into their hand will grasp. That's pure instinct. It is hardwired into that baby to grasp what is put into their hand. And that is at the heart of this realm. It is so instinctual and so primal that very often the reaction of somebody is, sometimes it's a knee-jerk reaction. They're just reacting from fear, or, you know, to get away from something. They just move themselves out of that situation and say things in the process or act in the process in a way that comes across as very naive.
Yeah.
But also it could be a reaction because that's all they've ever known.
Right.
All that person has ever known is that instinctual reaction, and they've never learnt to do otherwise.
Yeah, I have a high respect and regard for animals, so to put them in that category is like, oh, that's not.
I know.
That's not very good. But instinctual fight or flight, fear, you know, those are all, you're right, hardwired. You know, if you look at a dog that he encounters a situation that he's not sure of, you know, his hackles will come up. And dogs will do things that you kind of like, oh, what the heck's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? So no disrespect to my dog laying here.
It's like, are you talking about me again?
But using fear as now a point of reference with regard to the animal realm and why people say things, that instantly switches me to a more compassionate mindset. I'm not saying I won't react with a flick, but now looking at it from that perspective has shifted it. But you know what? We all have choices. It's still exasperating to me when anyone is in any of the realms and doesn't recognize that they have a choice. They have a choice to do something different. They have a choice to make change. And I know that's lifetimes of conditioning and the world we live in. I understand that that's the reason. But again, you know, turning up the flames a little bit would do the trick, because it would purify that. It would remove those things that bind all of us.
So many of the stratagem that we create as children, particularly when we're manipulating our parents into giving us something or behaving in a particular way, we keep that way of functioning and that behavioral model right into adulthood. And very often you can look at people who are in their 50s and 60s behaving as a child or a teenager might, in the way that they manipulate others to get a response of some kind. And there are steps in life where we evolve. We step out of being children. We step out of being teenagers. We start to take on the role of community leaders and supporters of a community. That is a very necessary evolution for everyone, to make sure that we all come together and exist and coexist in the world. We need to support each other. We need to guide each other.
Right.
You know, we need to look out for each other. And with children and teenagers, that's not necessarily their core function.
Right.
And it is remarkable to me that so much of the behavior that is indicative of the animal realm is that of that me. This is why I don't necessarily like the term of the animal realm, because when you think of, for example, a dog, sometimes dogs will take selfless action to defend and to protect.
Absolutely.
You know, and there are so many humans that wouldn't.
Right. You're redeemed, Logan.
Oh, good, he says. That makes all the difference.
Oh my goodness.
Wonderful. And then just to sort of like, you know, compound that very idea of animals actually not necessarily being indicative of the animal realm when we compare them to humans, the last realm on our journey is the human realm.
The human realm. Doo, doo, doo.
There is definitely a sense of privilege around that one, isn't there?
I feel like I need it.
And the human realm is the realm that traditionally, when we are incarnated into the human realm, that's where we have the ability to transcend and to reach enlightenment, or a state of enlightenment. However, in terms of the moment and our one therapy experience of the moment, there is this sense that the human realm is indicative of the qualities that create that sense of enlightenment within the moment. Right. So by working with the qualities of the human realm, we can actually reach a sense of oneness and a sense of being and a sense of enlightenment within that moment. So it's elements such as passion and drive to create change, compassion for other people is very important in the human realm as well. And a sense of doubt. Humans are always doubting themselves. They're always doubting their capacity and their capability. So this sense of, on one hand, striving in terms of compassion for others and having a passion to create a better world for others, and yet constantly doubting ourselves while we do that. And that's very much that state of the human realm. And I think we both very much have little sparkles, all that polarity within the human realms that we can relate to.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's good to be human.
Yes, it is.
But it's also important to mention also that each of us possess this oneness, and so it's one thing to recognize where we fit into the realms, obviously, because again we use them as tools to move onward. But when we recognize things in other realms that we don't like, it's because we recognize them maybe unconsciously, but they're in us because we're not separate.
Exactly.
Separation is completely an illusion, but that's hard for us as individuals to grasp fully. We get glimpses of it every now and again. If you are in a circumstance where you feel without power, where you feel alone, where you feel unloved and unwanted, you're part of a whole. And so therefore there is no lack. That's hard to get when you're in those depths of feeling that awful. However, striving to arrive to that point of understanding is an amazing journey that just helps fuel you to be able to evolve and move on.
Karma is paradoxical in so many ways. So it's a common trait when it comes to the understanding of karma that people wish bad karma on others. So if somebody witnesses somebody else doing something terrible, they'll say, oh, they'll get what's coming to them. Karma.
Right.
And that wish in itself is bad karma.
Yes.
They're actually creating that for themselves by wishing that on somebody else. And this is the thing with the realms that I find really leveling. We cannot blame others for want of finding that within ourselves and being that ourselves. What we can do is take accountability. Each of us has accountability to grow, to evolve, to be the best that we can possibly be, to change the world in a compassionate, kind, and benevolent way. And each of us shares that accountability. It is the accountability of humankind as custodians of this world to strive for that. Yet we cannot look at others and blame them for not doing that, because that is their accountability, not ours. We are not accountable for them. And by blaming, what we are actually doing is we are diminishing our own account. We're not living to our own accountability.
We're emphasizing what we want to diminish.
Yeah, exactly. When you visit the realms and you are exploring that karma, it's very easy to become connected to it and to speak from it because you're in that realm.
Yeah.
And then when you're in another realm, it's very easy to blame or to be detrimental to one of the other realms as well, because you're not in that realm. Yet when we look at the karmic realms, we actually understand that they are all equal. That there is no privilege of being in one as opposed to another. There is no better than this or that, because they are all equal. The human realm, in terms of philosophy and tradition, is the realm that when we are in that realm, that's where we can reach enlightenment. But really, that is a sum of all the other realms as well.
Correct.
So we have to know all of the realms, and they have to be a part of us in order to get this holistic view from a human perspective.
Right. And that's the key phrase, a holistic view from a human perspective. It's a multiple to one. And that's what's hard to get your head around. But it is so powerful when you stop and think about what that means. You reclaim your power right then and there.
Absolutely. Yeah. In terms of how historically these different realms have been viewed, there is such emphasis on the yuck in all of the realms apart from the human. And in the human realm, there is this sense of compassion and passion and joy and being better than. However, for me, in terms of what we've looked at in the other realms, the key word is the doubt, the self-detriment, the seeing oneself as not good enough. And that really is at the core of the human realm. We are so driven by doubt, so driven by diminishing ourselves and our own human ability to create change, that we are often trapped in the human realm in this sort of real sense of just not being good enough.
Yeah, I can't do anything.
I can't do anything. I'm just me, and feeling completely powerless to create change. And so in many ways, the antithesis of the realm of Deva's ultimate power and privilege, and the human realm is almost this sort of sense of complete lack of power. However, just as we have a sense of passion and a sense of compassion and a sense of drive within the human realm, all of the other realms have these qualities that are so immensely benevolent within them too. And if we leverage them, we are also working towards change in a very, very powerful way in the world.
You're talking very VKRT.
Absolutely. Exactly. And in terms of KRT, working with the karmic states, recognizing the karmic states of others and where they're at in that moment, and not only where we are, but also the effect that being in contact with that other realm has on us.
Yes.
Where it begins to identify within us where we are in that realm and where we have spent moments in that realm or continue to spend moments in that realm. The idea of working with treatment and with the karmic regression therapy experience, and to work with it in a way where you bring out the real power to change, that is extraordinarily powerful.
Absolutely.
And then how that relates to the other aspects of KRT as well, in terms of miasm and in terms of holography and in terms of the state, because that karmic realm perspective is just one of a series of different ways of understanding how we journey through time.
Take what is of value from each of those, because they all have value.
Yeah.
All have value. Everything has value. It's not it's not a good or bad, a positive or negative. It's all of value.
So are you going to head out now into one of the karmic realms on your journeys through the realms of fun therapy?
Yes. Actually, I do. So I won't be venturing too far from here. I could probably stay in there most of my time, but then I'd disappear probably.
I might go and find some hungry ghosts and invite them over for a banquet in Roman nose or Begred nose or one of the other nose.
Oh. Well, don't be surprised if I show up.
You're very welcome. Well, until next time that we meet again then, Linda.
Be enchanted.
You've been listening to the It's Reiki But Not As You Know It podcast, hosted by Martin Pentecost, originator of One Therapy, and Linda Hudzinski, guide and companion to the One Therapy community. find out more and to join in the conversation at onetherapy.com. one-therapy.com. It's Reiki, but not as you know it.